public safety should be first. And I've been around nuclear for many years. It's not. Behind that gate, it's not.
The 2.206 process, which is detailed in Management Directive 8.11 and associated desktop guide, specifically states that questions from the petitioner are limited to how the 2.206 process works. The staff will not be responding to the petitioner's questions aside from process questions.
I'd like to say that, with all due respect, you're hiding behind your regulations, which are focused on excluding the public comment and allowing industry comment. If anyone from the industry is attending, they can ask you questions today about anything, but the public is restricted to process only. Not a level playing field.
I'm Charles Langley. I've been a public advocate involved in rate regulation with California investor-owned utilities, or IOUs, for the last 25 years. We're here today because the NRC has determined that a canister breach is not credible, and we would like to see that term defined. So there are some specific issues we'd like the NRC to address, and those are, for example, what happens in the event there's a loss of cooling to a Holtec MPC canister, and what are the odds of that event happening? Specific odds. What is the risk of flooding? What is the specific risk for corrosion? What is the risk of fuel cladding failure? What is the risk of excessive pressure, either internal or external? What is the risk of criticality? What is the risk from thermal transients? And finally, what is the evaluated risk for terrorism and a terrorist attack on the facility? Now, the reason we're asking for that is because in American industry, there's a whole risk industry, the insurance industry. Risk management is a process that's standardized. And I put these two little flowcharts up here because they're from two separate risk management companies that are very prominent, but essentially they outline the same process. You identify the risk, you measure the risk, you examine it, and you identify what the likelihood of that risk occurring is. And what we're asking for today is that the NRC provide some type of proof that it's gone through this, well, actuarial process. So let's identify the risk and measure the risks. What are the odds? And specifically, what are the odds of a not credible event? What does the NRC mean by that? How risky is it? So I'd like to remind the Petition Review Board that SONGS failed due to a radiation leak that was not credible. And shortly after that radiation leak, when Edison shut down the San Onofre nuclear generating station, it granted Edison massive emergency planning exemptions. That meant that Edison could reduce its insurance liabilities. Then the burial or internment of the nuclear waste began at the Independent Spent Fuel Storage Installation, which is essentially a beachfront nuclear waste dump. But weeks before Edison actually started interring or burying those canisters on the beach, they waited because they wanted the NRC to grant on-site and off-site insurance exemptions. These off-site insurance exemptions are extremely important because that meant Southern California Edison was no longer liable for radiation risks outside of the site perimeter. And this is important to the public because if you, as a member of the public, try and go and purchase radiation insurance or nuclear disaster insurance, it's simply not available. Not a single private insurer will offer civilian homeowners or renters protection against nuclear waste. In fact, it's unlawful. The US government insures us, and that is essentially the way it is. But that was a change that was lobbied for by the insurance industry, because the insurance industry knew that the risks of a nuclear incident and the consequences were essentially uninsurable. A second point I have is that I'd like to observe that the NRC has a history of ignoring flood risks. This is a letter from September 14 of 2012 from Richard H. Perkins of the Division of Risk Analysis for the NRC. And he said, quote, "The NRC has been in possession of relevant, notable, and derogatory flooding safety information for an extended period, but failed to properly act on it." He then went on to say, concurrently, the NRC concealed this information from the public. And then he goes on even further to say, this concern involves a violation of law and is not related to a technical opinion or distinction, which is why he reported it to the Office of the Inspector General. We're concerned that the NRC's pattern of ignoring flood risks may be occurring at San Onofre. One example of a significant flood risk is that San Onofre is located in the middle of a tsunami inundation zone. Now, the operators of the plant, Southern California Edison, say we've got a great system for protecting against this. It's a 25-foot seawall. What they don't tell you is that that wall is 15 feet on the western side that faces the water, and it's 25 feet down to a drainage ditch below the wall on the other side, which faces the nuclear waste dump, the Independent Spent Fuel Storage Installation, or ISFSI. Now, if we zoom in on the center of this map, we see a zoom on the San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station. In that divot, that red notch there, it's basically in a floodplain and a tsunami inundation zone, which brings up very real risks of flooding. So for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to say it's not credible is something that we really question. Another issue we question is the idea of what constitutes flooding, because when you have flooding with a tsunami, it's kind of a different animal. Tsunamis can carry in tons of dirt, mud, rock, and other debris. So the entire site could be covered in gravel, sand, or organic debris. And this is important because these canisters that are manufactured by Holtec that store the waste are convection cooled. Now, another issue that recently made news just a couple of weeks ago is that the University of Copenhagen shows that sea level is going to increase faster than we thought it would. Quote, faster than previously thought because the water in the sea will expand as it gets warmer. We all know that water expands when it gets hot, and they're predicting that the oceans are going to get warmer. So we have no reason to doubt that. But what's important is that sea level rise predictions, which are very important for San Onofre because it is in a flood area and the bottoms of those canisters are inches above sea level, could be flooded sooner than we think. Finally, and these are my final 2 points, Songs is a legitimate military target under the rules of war. And I've put a hyperlink to that for those of you who want to look at this presentation online. And the reason for that is Songs is located on Camp Pendleton, a military base. Under the rules of war, it's perfectly legitimate to attack assets on a military base. Second, nuclear waste can be used to manufacture nuclear weapons. It's tremendously valuable stuff. In a sense, it's become a very valuable asset for foreign nations.
Is a canister that could have fallen 18 feet. It's a bad day. That happened. And you haven't heard about it. That's not right. My friend here is right. Public safety should be first. And I've been around nuclear for many years. It's not. Behind that gate, it's not. That problem had occurred before, but it wasn't shared with the crew that was working. We're undermanned. We don't have the proper personnel to get things done safely. and certainly undertrained. Many of the experienced supervisors, what we call CLSs, cast load supervisors, once they understand the project and how everything works, are often sent away, and we get new ones. They don't understand as well as even the craft, basic construction craft. A lot of them that haven't been around nuclear before are performing these tasks. Not technicians, not highly trained, not thorough briefs. This is an engineering problem. But the question is, will Edison and Holtec commit to defining success primarily in terms of nuclear safety? And will there be transparency, commitment to safety, and the financial commitment to make sure that it's done successfully? Thank you.
And with that, I'd like to thank the Petition Review Board for its careful concentration on our presentation today. And I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Blanche and Mr. Stewart for the remainder of the presentation.
So we're very much concerned that those petitions were denied without even consideration on their substantive merits. That is, they were just thrown out the door without even being read, essentially, based upon what we regard as a specious argument, but we'll get into that later. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the biggest acronym which we need to get clear is the NRC. And today's March 9th. Presenters will be Paul Blanche and myself, Process. He's been on both sides of the fence, working for the nuclear industry at times and now working as a public advocate. Again, my name's Stuart Scott. I'm Executive Director of the Facing Future.Earth project. I have a Master's of Science in Information Science. I'm a university instructor, or have been, in math, statistics, and critical thinking, how we know what we know. I'm an active observer at the UN FCCC's climate negotiations, and I'm the first environmentalist stockbroker on Wall Street, so my involvement in issues of public safety and environmental issues goes way back as well into the 1970s and beyond. So as background first, the NRC's own mission statement says the following. The NRC licenses and regulates the nation's civilian use of radioactive materials to protect public health and safety, promote the common defense and security, and protect the environment. And now I have highlighted, again, protect public health and safety and protect the environment. That's in your mission statement, all of the representatives of the NRC are here, but you don't do it. You say it, you talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk.
Okay, we're going to be talking about the process, which, certainly is allowed by MD 8.8. Next. We're going to be talking about the rejection of our October 13th petition, which is the foundation of this petition is based on Holtec's and the NRC's words of not credible. And I want to ask a direct question right now, and I want a direct answer. Will the NRC define what is meant by not credible?
I don't know how much silence we should let go before the vote.
We're listening.
What does not credible mean?
We're here to listen to you as we have shared with you before. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I did not hear an answer to the definition of not credible, which is the very foundation of everything we're going to be talking about. Is there anyone within the NRC willing to tell us what not credible means?
So, Mr. Blanche, this is Kevin Williams. and we've talked about this before, the purpose of this meeting is for you guys to provide us additional information with regard to what you want us to consider related to your petition. It's not to go back and forth in terms of what the staff determined not to be credible. It's to focus on what additional information you would like us to listen to.
Okay, you're quoting from a document produced by the industry in the NRC, not produced and approved by Congress or published in the Federal Register. We're going to get nowhere if you cannot define what is meant by not credible, which is the basis for all the safety assumptions in this entire spent fuel debacle. And now what I hear you're saying, based on the management directive developed by you guys, and you're not allowed to respond to a direct question to the public. This is, Scott, you probably got better words. And
Well, stonewalling is the polite word I'd use. Third point.
yeah, we're also going to briefly discuss our February 4th petition, which was rejected, not by the director, but by the PRB, Petition Review Board. It was rejected based upon erroneous information. Next slide, or next point. And again, going back, we gave you questions for the very purpose that we would be asking them the questions, and we expected a response. Next slide, please.
So our focus, we're going to go a little more specific. Our focus today is primarily on the deficiencies of Holtec's UMAX spent fuel storage system used at San Onofre and many other locations around the United States. So for the public in attendance, this is not just about one storage short-term storage area as San Onofre. It's about all over the United States, this defective system is in use. And here's a diagram.
Let me take it from here, Stuart. This is just a Holtec drawing of the system. We've got more drawings coming up, but most of this is below ground. The only, top 10% is above ground, and this is the storage system that is employed here and at Callaway, and by the way, is proposed for the interim storage out in New Mexico and Texas. So this is the beginning of a potential disaster. So this depicts air coming in, going down outside the shield, going through little mouse holes at the bottom that are about 4 inches high, and then it cools by convection, going upward along the side of the canister out, and I'm not sure what the differential temperature is, but it comes out as heated air. It works fine as long as the air can continue to flow. The problem that we're worried about here is when water comes in here for one means and blocks and fills this particular device, or VVM as it's called, some water will boil off, but there is no way to get the water out of the bottom with the equipment that they presently have or debris. Next slide.
Well, first I want to say, when you showed me this diagram, I immediately asked where the drains are, because this lies 100 feet from the ocean. A king tide, an unusually large tide, you don't even need a tsunami. A king tide would wash over these. They're not sufficiently protected. But next slide, moving right along. I wanted to interject here that this was all done and planned prior to our understanding climate change adequately. And in that area, which lies between Los Angeles and La Jolla, there's an 83% increased risk of severe flooding, the odds of extreme coastal flooding by 2030, within this decade, 83% increase as opposed to the Bay Area, where they're all worried about it because there are millionaire homes around there. Well, there just happens to be a nuclear spent fuel depository. I call it a cemetery right here between Los Angeles and La Jolla. And if that were to go off, both Los Angeles and San Diego would be affected. This is an aerial photo. The tents were an early phase of where this cemetery of 73 Holtec thin-walled canisters would go. Let me show you another view from the nearby ocean. You can see how much of the coast is wet and how far this just normal tide has come from the base of that wall. And that's not a 20-foot high, 25-foot high wall. If it's a 10-foot high wall, I'd be surprised. The 25 feet, I'm told, is on the other side, the land side, where it's not protecting from very much. And here a third view. This is that cemetery of thin-walled casks, partially filled. The ones with turrets are the ones that have already had these flawed devices buried in them, and the ones without those caps have yet to have them installed. Correct me if I'm wrong, Charles.
Yeah, Stuart, hold that picture, and I just want to make a comment here. If water from a tsunami comes up a few feet and floods this area, we have a disaster. We have 73 fuel canisters containing many times the radioactive material of Chernobyl. And when that occurs, we have a disaster. We don't know the significance of the disaster, but we know there are no provisions to ever get rid of the water out of here. And it'll come up later in the slide, we've asked about the flood analysis, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission refers us to section 4.6.2.5 of the FSAR that discusses the impact of flooding. And guess what? That section is deleted. I filed a FOIA request for the information. I get back from the FOIA branch. Here's where it's discussed, again redacted. And again, an agency protecting the public. Next slide, please.
Well, Paul,
And just to be clear, all 73 of those canisters have been downloaded at this point. So the project in terms of downloading all the nuclear waste canisters has been completed. Thank you.
but Paul, I'd remind you, please define your acronyms. So FOIA for the public is Freedom of Information Act.
So these are the ways we can change interpretation of the regulation or the regulations themselves. Next slide, please.
Oh, before I want to ask you a question, Paul, the rulemaking, is that essentially a process you do with the federal government or with the NRC?
It's dealt in conjunction with the NRC, with Congress, and, it's a very extensive legal process and results in new law or changes to existing law.
Okay. Now, I'd like to take over here. I want to examine how the public gets an astonishingly unfair deal in the 10 CFR 206 petition process. From 1975 to 2012, you can count the years, that's about 37 years, 387 petitions under 10 CFR 206, and those are only the ones that were not outright rejected by the NRC on what we regard as capricious and unsubstantive grounds. But the 387 that made it past their first, we already talked about this, which was a specious claim.
Yeah, let's try to speed it up a little bit, sir.
Only 2 were granted substantive relief, and of those 2, 1 was from the nuclear industry itself. So in those 37 years, only 1 has made its way through. We estimate there were about 1,000 petitions submitted by the public over this time. So perhaps a third of them made it past that. Sorry, we won't consider this point. Only 1 out of 1,000 has gotten even reviewed. And the supposed substantive relief was judged by the Atomic Safety
Licensing Board.
they determined that the substantive relief was not substantive relief, a judicial body essentially that oversees the NRC. So we don't know for sure how many petitions, since the NRC either does not keep or does not publish the numbers that they've rejected outright by the Petition Review Board without any director's intervention or opinion. And according to the PRB's interpretation, by a letter of September 2015, these rejections cannot be appealed. We can say, we won't consider this, end of story, next on, okay? This is a misinterpretation of 10 CFR 2.206, once again, excluding any public input. Boy, does that make me angry. So in 37 years, only 1 public petition has been granted substantive relief. What an incredible statistics. Federal regulation 10 CFR 206 prohibits any public appeal. Travesty.